I really wish
Oh,
you'd tell me at the start of our sessions because, like, the our initial conversation tends to be quite fruitful, and I regret missing out on that.
all right. Why is it not seeing my screen? Okay, I'm going to have to back out. Oh, that's wrong. Just a second here. Something's going on. Here we go. Okay. You know that when anyone talks about um, brief, speaking in any context, uh, I don't care whether it's presentation or acting or broadcasting or what we're talking about, you know that sooner or later, um, someone's going to mention the importance of breathing. So we're going to take a closer look at it today and see if this helps with your understanding of what's supposed to be happening. And now I can't find my annotation. Give me a moment here.
Take your time. Is this the proper PDF reader? Maybe you use another PDF reader.
Sorry, I'm trying to find my annotation tool here. Okay, now I think I'm set. We all know that breathing has to do with respiration. Respiration has to do with exposing blood to air, so it gives off carbon dioxide and takes on oxygen, and we know that happens in the lungs. So I think the lungs are a good place to start this conversation. Your lungs completely fill the upper half of your torso. So from here up, except for the small space that's taken up by your heart, the rest of the space in here is completely filled with lung tissue. In fact, the upper tips of your lungs actually come up higher than your collarbone. So there's my collarbone right there. Tip of the lung comes up higher than that. You're just jam-packed full of lung tissue. Because of the shape of your ribs, your lungs are narrower at the top and wider at the bottom. So they're roughly cone-shaped. Because of that shape, you have 5 times the space for air down in the bottom of your lungs compared to what you have up in the top of your lungs.
Mm-hmm.
And because blood always tends to follow gravity, blood always wants to flow down. When you're upright, standing, seated, you have 10 times the amount of blood flowing around in the bottom of your lungs compared to what you have in the top of your lungs.
So basically, what you're trying to say is if I can access the inner depths of my lungs, not only am I getting more air in, but I'm able to get a greater efficiency of oxygen transfer into my body because all the blood coagulates at the bottom or at the base.
Yeah. So if you can breathe down into the bottom of your lungs, you're getting 5 times the amount of air, exposing it to 10 times the blood flow. So as you figured out, respiration is going to happen a lot more efficiently under those conditions. That means then that heart rate can actually decrease because your heart doesn't have to pump as many times to get the same amount of blood oxygenated.
So you seem less excitable, you seem more calm.
That would probably be one side effect. So heart rate decreases, blood pressure decreases, muscle tension decreases, and you actually trigger the release of the happy hormones, the feel-good hormones like endorphins or oxytocin or dopamine. All those feel-good hormones get triggered just from breathing deeply into the bottom of your lungs. Pretty nice way to live. By contrast, if you're only breathing into the upper tips of your lungs, you're getting 1/5 of the air, exposing it to 1/10 of the blood flow. Under those conditions, heart rate has to increase to keep you respired. So blood pressure increases, muscle tension increases, and then you trigger the release of the stress-related hormones like adrenaline, which is going to make you feel jumpy and queasy, and cortisol, which actually inhibits brain function, so then you don't think as clearly. Not such a nice way to live. So the question obviously becomes, how do we get air down into the bottom of the lungs? This is where the diaphragm comes into play. The diaphragm is essentially a horizontal sheet of muscle that divides the upper half of your torso from the lower half of your torso. Now, in reality, in its resting position, it's in this more like a dome shape. But it's attached all around the outer perimeter of your ribs. So if I take my fingers and I dig under my ribs like this, I'm actually contacting the outer edges of my diaphragm when I do that. You can also see from this diagram that it has a couple of attachments to your lumbar vertebrae and your lower back. So when you do some roll downs, some spinal rolls, start moving those lumbar vertebrae, you're actually starting to affect the attachments of your diaphragm. It's your primary muscle for breathing. Not the only one, but the primary one. And it's mostly under the control of your unconscious nervous system. And that's a good thing, because then when you go to sleep, you keep breathing. But if somebody says, well, to be a good speaker, you have to learn how to control your diaphragm. Yeah, that's not really true. You don't control your diaphragm any more than you control digestion or the beating of your heart. It's one of those critical bodily functions that's just automatically pre-programmed to happen. Furthermore, I think this is interesting, the diaphragm has very few nerve endings in it, so you can't feel it working. How could you possibly control a muscle that you can't even feel in the first place? So how does it work? Like I said, in its resting position, it's in this dome shape. When it contracts, it flattens and moves downward. That's much like pulling a plunger down through a syringe if you're trying to draw the medicine into it. Or you could think of the piston inside the cylinder in an internal combustion engine. When the piston goes down through the cylinder, air and fuel are drawn into the cylinder. Much the same concept here. The bottom of your lungs are actually indirectly attached to your diaphragm. So when the diaphragm flattens and moves downward, the bottom of the lungs get pulled downward as well. And that makes it much more likely that breath will flow all the way down into the bottom of the lungs. When it relaxes, it moves upward. It goes back to its dome-shaped position. That's like pushing the plunger back up through the syringe. Air is forced out of the lungs. And there you have one cycle of breathing. Your diaphragm is working, flattening.
The flatter the diaphragm gets in its zero position, the more air you're drawing in.
Say the further down it gets.
Yeah, the further down, and hence the flatter it becomes.
Okay, maybe.
No, because you said it's curved when it's in its resting phase. When it's tense and pulled all the way down, it flattens somewhat.
It flattens somewhat, that's correct. All right, does this make sense mechanically?
Yes.
Technically, your diaphragm is working when you inhale and relaxing when you exhale, but remember, we don't feel that contrast because we can't feel the diaphragm. All right.
So what we're gonna pull on something else that the diaphragm is connected to, and then we indirectly control the diaphragm?
No, we're just going to get out of the way and let it work.
Okay.
You can see from this diagram here, and here, the diaphragm shown in the context of the surrounding organs.
Okay.
Notice that it's been partially cut away. Remember, it comes all the way out to the outer edges of your rib structure, but here in this diagram, it's been partially cut away so you can see what's underneath of it. You've got the liver right up here under the right-hand side. You've got the stomach right here under the left-hand side. Underneath that, all the intestines. It makes you wonder, how does the diaphragm possibly flatten and move downward? There's no empty space under there. There's nowhere for it to go. And the answer is that all of these lower abdominal organs have to be displaced. They have to be pushed out of the way to a certain extent when the diaphragm pushes down.
That's why your stomach distends when you take a breath in.
There you go. We can see that best from the side. So here again, we've got the diaphragm in its resting position, liver, stomach, intestines. When it flattens and moves downward, all of these organs have to get pushed out of the way. That means the muscles of your abdominal wall have to give enough to allow that displacement to happen. So, flip side, if my abdominal muscles are tense, if they're hard, they're not going to move, which means all of this stuff here is not going to budge, which means your poor old diaphragm, it's blocked, it's jammed, it can't move. Now, if that's happening, and lots of people have tense abs, how do you think you're going to get a breath? Because obviously you have to keep breathing somehow.
They're going to be very shallow and very rapid.
If you can't get your expansion downward with the diaphragm,
you get it all.
Then you have to get your expansion upward. You have to lift away from that obstruction.
Oh, okay.
We can see that best if we go back to this diagram, I think. So, you know, if this is, I do this at least once every friggin' lesson. So if this isn't moving, then your only other choice is to lift. But every time you lift your chest to breathe, you have to fight gravity. It's energy expensive. We don't think about it because we're so used to doing it. It takes more work to lift your chest and shoulders to breathe. Furthermore, this is bone and cartilage. So yeah, it's got some flexibility to it, but you don't get near the expansion in your chest that you get from that nice little muscle plunger moving up and down inside the core of your torso.
I just realized whenever I breathe upwards.
That's right. And my point here is that you're working harder. In the end, you're getting less breath. And here's the kicker. Air always tends to follow the path of least resistance. Air always wants to stay high. So if you're lifting your chest to breathe, where do you think the air is going to go in your lungs? Where's it going to end up?
It's trying to escape it.
It's just going to go into the upper parts of your lungs because there's nothing to get it down. If we're just lifting our chest to breathe, air wants to stay high. Does that make sense?
Yes.
All right. We already know what happens when we're breathing up there. Increased heart rate, increased muscle, increased blood pressure, increased muscle tension, stress hormones. So when voice teachers are always yakking about the importance of diaphragmatic breathing, they're not doing that just because they don't have anything better to talk about. There are real physical consequences if you're not breathing with your diaphragm, and there are real physical benefits from breathing with your diaphragm. Now it's obvious just by glancing at this diagram And when I talk about breathing into your belly, no air is going down there.
Okay.
However, when my diaphragm's working, it looks like I'm breathing into my belly. It even feels like I'm breathing into my belly. So I like to be anatomically correct when I teach and scientific. But in this case, I'm not being scientifically accurate. However, I think that that image of allowing breath to go all the way down there encourages us to relax our abs, which in turn allows those internal organs to be slightly displaced, which in turn allows the diaphragm to do what it's pre-programmed to do. There are other ways of teaching breathing. Some teachers focus a lot on the lateral movement of your lower ribs. And that does happen to some extent when the diaphragm comes down. However, I feel like that gets into work very easily. And at the beginning of our training, we don't need to be working more. We need to be working less. Make sense?
I suppose. I don't know yet. Let's see.
What's the hang up? What haven't I explained well?
No, it's not yet. I'm trying to visualize how it ultimately happens. Like ultimately, because does my stomach push out and my diaphragm go down instead of everything moving up? Like what's the sequence of events?
Brain, outside of your control, your brain is monitoring the carbon dioxide levels in your blood. It's going to send the trigger for your diaphragm to activate. So in an ideal world, the diaphragm contracts, flattens, moves down. In the act of doing that, it pushes all the lower abdominal organs out of the way, which makes the waistline expand slightly.
Okay. So what I need to do is I need to find a way to break up the tension in my abs then? You're saying that in
We need to learn how to let go of the abs. That's right. Especially when we breathe in. Most of us are, when we breathe in, we're working when we breathe in, and we're actually pulling our tummy in.
yes.
And we need to learn how to do the opposite. We need to learn how to feel the inhalation as a letting go, as a relaxation. And everything will spread. And then when you exhale, you just let go. All right. So if you're ready to be on the floor, let's see if we can make this work.
Okay. Does it have to be the floor or do I need to be flat on my back?
You need to be on your back, but I don't want you on a bed because that's probably not going to be firm enough to allow it to happen. However, if you do want to put, a mat or a duvet or something under you, just to cushion yourself a bit, that's fine.
Can I put something under my head?
Yep, you can.
One moment.
All right, on your back, legs extended, arms at your sides.
Sorry.
I
just put my headphone on. Go ahead.
Okay, legs extended, arms at your sides. I'm going to take you through a bit of a relaxation exercise first, and then we'll start looking at your breath. So the first thing I'd like you to do is imagine that every bone in your body is being affected by gravity. So obviously you can feel your heel bones on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine the bones of your lower legs resting on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine your thigh bones resting on the ground. You can probably literally feel your pelvis resting on the ground. Imagine the entire length of your spine on the ground. Now, perhaps the lower back and almost certainly the neck spine will not be touching the ground because of the natural curve, but imagine it wants to be resting on the ground. Feel your ribs resting on the ground. Feel your shoulder blades on the ground. The bones of your upper arms, your forearms, your hands, thumbs, and fingers, all these bones just resting on the ground. And of course, your skull is resting on the ground. Every bone in your body is being affected by gravity and wants to be on the ground. Then I'd like you to return to your feet. Imagine all those tiny muscles across the top of your feet just dissolving away into nothing. Imagine the muscles in the bottom of your feet softening and lengthening. Imagine all the muscles of your feet being so relaxed that your feet could breathe, that they could inflate when you breathe in and deflate when you breathe out. Yeah, it's totally imagination, but just go with it. Next, we're going to relax the muscles in the lower legs, the shin muscles in the front, calf muscles in the back. Imagine the lower leg muscles being so relaxed that they could inflate when you breathe in and deflate when you breathe out. Then relax the thigh muscles, quadriceps in the front, hamstrings in the back. Imagine your thigh muscles being so relaxed that they could breathe. Expanding when you breathe in, deflating when you breathe out. Picture your glutes, your butt muscles, just melting into a big puddle on the ground. So now we have your legs and feet totally relaxed. And the weight of your legs and feet is completely resting on the ground. Next, relax your belly. Imagine your belly muscles sagging down toward the ground. I like to think of a pool cover with rainwater collecting on top of it. Imagine your belly muscles doing that. And relax the muscles in your lower back. Imagine them softening and lengthening. Relax the muscles of your middle and upper back. The lat muscles that give your torso that V shape. The rhomboid muscles between your shoulder blades. Trapezius muscles that give your shoulders that sloped look. Imagine these large muscles of the back relaxing and actually allowing your back to get wider on the ground. Then relax the muscles of your chest. Pec major, pec minor, all of those small intercostal muscles between your ribs. Imagine these chest muscles just letting go and actually wanting to slide off your chest and rest on the ground if that was possible. Notice how that allows your shoulders then to relax back onto the ground. So speaking of the shoulders, relax the deltoids. Those muscles that give your shoulders that wide look. Imagine those muscles inflating when you breathe in and deflating when you breathe out. So now we have your torso completely relaxed and the weight of your torso totally supported by the ground. Now relax the muscles of your upper arms, the biceps in the front, the triceps in the back. Can you imagine these muscles being so relaxed that they could breathe? Expanding when you inhale, deflating when you exhale. And let go of all the muscles in your forearms, hands, thumbs, fingers. Picture these muscles softening, being able to breathe. And maybe in the case of your hands and thumbs and fingers, just dissolving away entirely. So now we have your arms completely relaxed. The weight of your arms just resting on the ground. Then relax the muscles of your neck. Muscles at the back of your neck, at the sides of your neck, in the front of your neck. Imagine that you could increase the distance from your shoulders to your ears because the neck muscles are lengthening and letting go. Then relax your jaw. Encourage it just to hang loosely. Relax your tongue. Imagine it just lying heavily in the floor of your mouth. Relax your lips and all the muscles around your mouth. Relax your cheeks, your nostrils, the muscles over the bridge of your nose. Relax your eyelids, your eyebrows, and the muscles between your eyebrows. Relax your forehead and all the muscles over your scalp. So now your face and head is totally relaxed and the weight of your head completely supported by the ground. Take a scan back down through your body, starting with the top of your head and moving right down to your feet. Notice if there are any body parts that are resisting their connection to the ground. If there are, breathe into that part. Imagine it becoming warm. Invite that part of your body to just be supported by the ground. How are we doing so far?
I don't know. I mean, I feel as flat as I was when I started. I tried to maintain as much planar contact with the floor as I could.
Right. Now, without disturbing that relaxation, without doing anything or manipulating anything, I'd like you to turn your attention to your breathing. Just notice your body breathing. Notice the speed of your breaths. It might be faster or slower than what you would have expected Don't change it. Don't control it. Just observe it. Just allow it to happen. Notice the size of your breaths. They might seem larger or smaller than what you would have guessed. Again, don't control it. Just allow it to happen. Notice the rhythm of your breathing. Notice how breath flows into your body, turns around, flows out. That is very much like a wave on the beach. It's always moving. It's either flowing in or it's flowing out. But it's never stopped. It's never held. It's never blocked. It's always in movement. And finally, notice the location of your breath. Notice where you can feel the rise and fall of the breath in your body. I'd like you to take one hand and just, in a very relaxed way, place it over your torso on that spot where you feel the rise and fall of your breath. And since I can't see you, you'll have to tell me where your hand ended up.
Just below my rib, right in the center, where my
Okay.
stomach rises and falls.
All right, so sort of the upper belly, you might say.
Yes.
All right. Now, just as an experiment, could you slide your hand down over your navel and see if you detect any rise and fall there? Remember, you're not making this happen. You're just allowing your body to breathe. Anything in that area?
Yeah, very slightly, but
Okay, very slightly.
It feels more prominent the higher up I go.
Higher up, okay.
Like
Now notice, you didn't have to make your breath go down there. All you did was get down on the floor, do a little relaxation, and that's the way your body started to breathe. You were probably already starting to breathe into your belly by the time we got your legs relaxed, I'm guessing. That's what usually happens with people. So you don't have to make your body breathe this way. This is the way your body wants to breathe. If we can just stay out of the way and allow it to happen. Now, relax your lower jaw so that your lips are parted. Imagine this area under your hand isn't just your center of gravity, and it isn't just your center of breathing, but it's actually the center of your inner life. And by that I mean the place where your thoughts and feelings and impulses are operating. You know, we tend to think of those things happening in our head, in our brain. But there's some good research to show that emotions, for example, are a full body experience. Imagine this area under your hand as being a very dynamic place. Never the same from one moment.
I couldn't quite hear you. Could you please repeat what you said?
Never the same from one moment to the next. As thoughts come and go, as feelings rise to the surface and sink away, as impulses push forward and recede. Very dynamic place, vibrating with energy. Allow an in-breath to flow down into that area under your hand and connect with something that's vibrating there at that moment, and release out vibrating with sound. Ah. You tried. And then a new breath flows down into your center and touches vibration and releases out vibrating with sound. Ah. Try that 2 or 3 more times. And we're not just breathing now, we're adding the vibration of sound to it. Ah. And again. And a third time. If your voice was so simple that it was just a breath of vibration and an open pipe, how would that feel? Nothing else. Try it. And if sound is just vibrating breath, would it be possible that that sound is just as easy and effortless as exhaling? Again. And can you imagine that the source of that vibration is down there under your hand? And of course, it is imagination. Now, take your time. Don't use any more muscles than you absolutely have to. And I'd like you to slowly roll yourself over onto one side. Doesn't matter which side, just on one side. And you might want to have something under your head to support your head a bit. Let me know when you get there. Take your time.
Okay, I'm on my side.
All right. So we've rotated your body 90 degrees. Now gravity is affecting you from the side rather than from your back. If you stay out of the way, if you allow your body to just rest and be supported by the ground, do you breathe in and out of the center in this position?
I guess it feels strange.
Does your stomach move out as you breathe in?
Yes.
All right. If that's the case, let's add some vibration to that and see how it feels. How simple can this be? Is it just breath, vibration, and an open channel? Does it still feel as easy as exhaling? All right. Then, moving slowly, I'd like you to bring yourself onto all fours so that you're on your hands and knees facing down as though you were down on the floor playing horse with a child. Let me know when you get into that position. All right. Now we've turned your torso another 90 degrees. Gravity is affecting you from the front rather than from the side. If you stay out of the way, if you just allow your body to breathe, do you breathe in and out of the center in this position?
Yes.
If that's the case, allow an in-breath to connect with vibration, release out vibrating with sound. Ah.
Oh.
Is it still just breath, vibration, and an open pipe? Ah.
Oh.
And is it still as easy as exhaling? Ah.
Oh. Oh.
Now, moving slowly, I'd like you to bring yourself to a kneeling position so that your torso is vertical and you're on your knees. That's right, take your time. Don't use any more muscles than you have to. All right, so now we've rotated you 90 degrees again. Gravity is affecting you from underneath rather than from your front. If you stay out of the way, if you just allow your body to breathe,
Oh.
do you still breathe in and out of the center?
Yes.
All
But I
right,
think my breath is more shallow now.
all right. Just try to stay out of the way. Try to keep all those muscles just as relaxed as they were when you were on your back. Touch of sound. Ah.
Oh.
A few more times. How easy can this be?
Oh. Oh. Oh.
All right. And then when you're ready, bring yourself back to, actually, you can just come back to a seated position if you like. Tell me what you were noticing when you were relaxing, breathing, experimenting with sound. What did you find?
I mean, I couldn't find that I could relax. That's something that's always eluded me.
You couldn't find what?
That I could relax. It's something that's always eluded me. The sensation of relaxation, but something that it's weird for me. I always felt that the way I breathe when I'm on my back has seemed like the wrong way to breathe. I've always felt that uh, how I breathe when I'm standing is correct. Again, I'm not saying that I am correct, but it's how it's always felt to me. I always felt
Mm-hmm.
like when I was on my back, that was just my body compensating for its mechanisms being inverted in some warped fashion.
Mm-hmm.
So it was weird having to relabel everything as, oh, so what I thought was wrong was right. So,
Right. It's tense. It tends to be very easy for people to access diaphragmatic breathing when they're on their back.
mm,
In my experience, in my entire career, maybe I've had 3 people who didn't breathe with their belly when they were on their back.
oh yeah, I could
Um,
definitely feel that. Like it on my
yeah.
back, it's much easier than in any other
In
position.
any of the other positions,
It's
right?
it definitely, like you said, it didn't even require effort because at that point gravity is working with you. The problem is tapping into that same phenomena when you're not in a position in which it can happen most naturally.
So what's also typical is that as we progressively become more upright, our breath tends to want to come up as well.
Mhm.
And so, as you just said, our challenge is how do we keep that breath connected down there in, in the belly, in the center, no matter what position our body's in. And
Doing
hopefully you
meditations
felt
horizontally.
on your side, you know, hands and knees, kneeling, that it's still possible for the diaphragm to be functioning as it's supposed to function. But we do tend to control it more as we get more upright. So that's our challenge, is to learn how to invite our body to do that no matter what position we're in.
So, but for me, what I'm kind of taking away from this is I've always like struggled to let my stomach distend because it doesn't look nice. As males, you want your chest to be puffed up.
Mm.
So I feel like that's all counterintuitive. I think I need to let go of trying to look good, instead just puff my belly out.
Yeah,
Yeah, it,
let's
it feels better.
join the rest of the world, right? We all, especially in this day and age, want to have a small, flat waistline, and there's a lot of social pressure to make that happen. And but the truth is that you'd be surprised at how little people notice. I used to joke with my clients that if people are watching your belly when you're speaking, you're not doing a very good job of communicating. Uh, and the other thing is that once you know how it feels, you can be very subtle about it. You can
Mm.
still have that diaphragmatic breath without having to be, so obvious. And if it really bothers you, if
Nah,
it was me, I would just dress in ways that disguise it.
mm. Or
Um,
lose weight.
so,
No, it's fine.
yeah,
It's okay. I'm not mentioning this so as to come up with excuses not to do it. It's just okay. I'm just embracing it now.
all right, great. Okay, what felt good today? What discovery did you make?
That how I breathe on my back is correct. Uh, it's not an abomination.
Okay,
Which and I guess I think I finally like I've always felt conflicted because I've always had two separate kinds of breathing, like you mentioned, like the breathing where my stomach goes in and my chest goes out, and then when I release, my stomach protrudes. And otherwise, I've never really known which was correct or which one was right and which one was wrong.
mm-hmm.
I'm glad I finally have a handle on what's supposed to be right.
Okay. What's the challenging thing you noticed today?
I mean, making it happen. Like you say, whenever we talk about things, you always refer to them happening innately. But with me, it feels anything but. Hell, if they would happen innately, I wouldn't have sought your help to begin with. I just don't know how this is supposed to happen. That's a challenge for me. I don't
Yeah,
know how I'm supposed to make this normal.
right.
Again, like to tie this to our earlier lesson when you mentioned keeping your mouth open. I'm not sure if I'm any clearer now than I was before, but if I am, it's because I'm making a very deliberate effort to keep my mouth open, and it's not second nature at all. Um, it's okay. I'm not complaining. I'm just saying it's strange. So I
Okay,
don't know how I'm going to do this with the stomach breathing.
okay. If it doesn't feel strange at first, then you're probably not doing anything different. So it should feel strange at
Mhm.
first. And also, if it was natural by your second lesson, I would have to quadruple my fees, right? This takes time. And if if you're willing to just give it the time and attention, it will happen. The place where people miss out is that they just get impatient and stop paying attention to it.
Do I look like a man who's impatient?
Oh, no, not at all.
I'm an angry and frustrated man. I'll give you that. But you know what, Mr. J? Here's a question for you. If this truly is like all of these motions and sequences that you're referring to, if they truly are that natural, how come, as you mentioned last time, so many people are only able to breathe from their chest and not from their diaphragm? For example,
Mhm.
like, do you
I
know?
think my theory about this is that it's the behaviors that we accumulate over time that are almost defensive ways of coping with the world around us. So if you watch a baby breathing, that's the way the baby's breathing. And even toddlers, they're breathing with their belly. So I think in that sense, we can say that must be the natural way to breathe. But then as we grow older and more self-conscious and take on, like I said, more defenses against the pressures that we deal with, then we adopt this more stress-related method of breathing. And it's very, very widespread. So,
You know what? Now that you mention it, I do have to. I don't know how far back into my memories I'm digging, but I recall perhaps this is only as far back as my university years. But I'd recall whenever I'd feel exasperated or frustrated, I would have like these big gulps of air that would involve my belly. And I always felt self-conscious about them because, hell, if you're always breathing from your belly or you're taking in big gulps, then surely it signals that you're exasperated and immensely exhausted. Whereas if your entire body isn't reverberating and you're only taking these shallow breaths from your chest, you seem more composed and in control. At least like when you're trying to gather yourself. Now, I I don't know. Is there a way of taking big gulps at a slow, like
I would
without
just
utter
I would
distress?
discourage you from working with large breaths, especially at this stage of your training.
Hmm.
Large breaths will only make you more tense.
Yes.
Always be taking medium to small breaths.
Yeah. And
So
instead of puffing up my
don't be
chest,
tanking up.
so instead of puffing out my chest, just puff out my stomach, but in stretches or pulses about as large as I used to with my chest. Like keep the volume the same, but from below, not from the top.
You're going to get the amount of air that comes in from relaxing your belly. That's it. So I don't want to see your chest and shoulders going up and down or expanding. I just want to see the belly going in and out. And that's going to be just the amount of movement. The amount that the belly moves will determine how much air comes in on that breath.
I think I'm starting to get the hang of it. It's just a restructuring of what's acceptable.
It's a big, big change, believe me. But I can also say that it's probably the one thing that will revolutionize the way you speak. Everything changes when you change your breathing.
Okay.
All right. Is your next one already on the calendar?
Let me see. I believe our next session is on the 19th.
Okay. Well, that's 10 days from now. Okay.
Yeah, because I couldn't find any slots during the next week
I see.
that were
Oh, because
at
it's
the end.
Thanksgiving week. So the week is shorter. Yeah. Competition is higher for spots. All right. Well,
It's
just
not just that, it's
keep your
also
eye on the calendar. If people cancel, you're welcome to grab the spots.
okay.
Uh,
And
So,
again, you know, we mentioned we'll always be taking the last spot in the day
yep.
because I can't make it any earlier. I apologize.
All right. Well, keep practicing then, and I'll see you on the 19th.
Okay, so what exercise am I doing? Exercises, sorry, am I doing this week? Or the in
All of
general?
all of what we did last week, and now I want you to add the belly breathing practice to it.
Is there a belly breathing practice or is there a belly breathing exercise? I don't recall coming across one. Or will you be sending one after this?
No, just what we did today, lying down, practicing breathing into the belly, seeing if you can bring that to an upright position.
Okay.
Or any time throughout the day, maybe you're seated at your desk, maybe you're standing talking to friends. Just ask yourself, is it possible at this moment to allow a breath to expand my belly? That's practice.
So talking with my mouth open wider, stretching my tongue out and speaking from my belly, or breathing, inhaling through my belly.
Mm-hmm.
These are the three primary exercises.
Mm-hmm. And feeling sound when you make sound, rather than listening to yourself. Feeling sound in your body.
What I can tell you, I definitely feel is I feel that reverberation more than anything else. Like in the absence of reverberation, I can tell myself, hey, I sound clear right now. Like, for example, over the course of our discussion during this session, I very rarely sensed myself reverberate. So I'm at least telling myself, hey, I don't know what Jay's hearing, but he's probably getting a relatively decent sampling of audio today from what I'm saying. And he isn't having to stitch together as many incoherent phrases as, let's say, last session or the session before that, or as he would usually have to do if my voice were to be reverberating. Would you say that's correct, at least? Did you notice any roughness today while I was speaking?
Oh yeah, I still notice roughness, but I don't expect that to go away today. So
At least it's diminished.
I think the thing to ask is, were there moments today when I heard a smoother, clearer tone? And the answer is yes.
Okay. Yeah.
So that's what I'm looking for.
Oh, yes. So obviously, like when I feel it intensely, that's when I know, like, oh, that probably did not come out well at all. Now, sometimes I can barely sense it. There will still be a slight off chance that it did not come out right, but it's still highly unlikely, or it would be like at the tail end of a synonym. Sorry, not a synonym, the tail end of a syllable. Like you'd miss it, but the rest of the phrase would be not the phrase. The rest of the word would be coherent enough to not mistake for something else, for lack of a better term.
Right.
Mhm.
Hey, can you flutter your lips? Is that something you're able to do? Fantastic. Okay,
But
good.
I'm not doing it from the lips. I'm doing it from the sides, if that makes sense.
It's okay. As long as your lips flutter, I'm happy.
What's
That's
the
another
significance of that?
fantastic breathing exercise as well, because not only do we have to worry about getting breath into our body, we have to be conscious of how we're getting breath out of our body in the act of speaking. And a lip flutter is a really fantastic way to start really giving your breath away quite generously rather than holding it inside. So there's another breathing exercise you could add to your practice. Lots of lip flutters whenever you have a chance.
What's the distinction between a flutter and just, pouting and going?
Because when you do that, without getting into a lot of detail, when you're doing that, there's the lip flutter provides a bit of an obstruction. And that's actually beneficial for your voice when we start moving to sound.
Okay.
So, but without pursing your lips, just this idea of letting go of breath with a feeling of a sigh of relief, that's very valuable too. So, giving away breath. Okay. I will see you on the 19th.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Thanks for keeping you today. Have a good day.
Bye-bye.